Hey, welcome everybody. And today I'm going to talk about crappies, brush piles, Sam Rayburn Lake, and Lowrance Active Target, and how all four of those things combined got me a dinner for this coming Saturday. So, anyways, let me just tell you, the Lowrance Active Target is, uh, it's so incredibly advantageous for catching fish. It's it's really it's I mean, back in Minnesota through the summer when I was using it, I caught more walleyes, I caught more crappies, I caught more bass than I normally would. And the same thing's going on here at Sam Rayburn. Um, I went out today. Well, I went out yesterday bass fishing and was marking some brush piles with the Lowrance side scan, then going back and fishing them. And I actually caught a couple crappies by accident. So today I actually tried crappie fishing, and because the bass fishing, where I went today, there were so many. There's a huge tournament going on right now, like 400 boats, and it was windy. So the area that I picked, a million other guys picked. So you couldn't practice there because there was just too many guys. I mean, I tried marking some stuff, and I'd mark it, and I'd like a brush pile, I'd mark it, and then I'd go keep graphing, and then mark another one, keep graphing. Then I'd turn around and go fit to just check them out with a lure, and there'd already be somebody on those brush piles. So it was just take a number day at that place. So, anyways, so I decided, you know what, I don't want to mess with these guys. I don't want to catch the bass they might. So then I'll just crappie fish. So, and it's really simple with this active target and the Lowrance's graph. You go looking for the brush pile using the side scanning part of the Lowrance, and when you see it on there, you mark it with the GPS. Then you go fish it. And the active target allows you precision casting because you can know exactly the direction you need to cast to hit that brush pile with your bait. And that's really important because it was windy today, and the nose of the boat was moving around, and blow me out of position, and I'd have to move it back with the trolling motor, and I always knew exactly right where that brush pile is. But not only did the active target was it important for knowing the direction to cast, but depth control of my crappie jig was also critical. So what I was using for the bait was a 3/8 ounce Smallie Smasher jig head with a 2.8 inch swim bait on there. And the depth control was critical because if you let it sink too deep on your cast, you would snag the brush pile. And if you didn't let it sink enough, well, you'd miss the top of the brush pile, or you wouldn't come close enough to it, and you wouldn't get the bite. So with the active target, you know which direction to cast, and you know how deep to let your jig sink. So what I'd do is I'd set up about 40 feet away from the brush pile, cast past the brush pile over the top of it, and I could see the jig slowly sink on the Lowrance active target. And then when it would get to the depth that was equal to the top of the brush pile, then I'd just start slowly reeling and reel at a speed to keep it at that depth. So if I reel too fast, it would come up too high. If I reel too slow, it would go too deep. And I definitely didn't want it too low because then I risked the chance of snagging the top of the brush, which you don't want to do because then you got to go and snag it, and you spook the fish for a while, and you don't catch nothing. So anyways, so I'd slowly reel, and you literally would see the fish come up out of the crappies would come up out of the top of the brush pile and hit that crappie jig. So, and you knew right away. It's like if it was a good brush pile, it would happen first cast. See, now the conditions were perfect. I mean, the crappies were really active. We had heavy overcast skies, a little bit of wind, and some rain, and the crappies were active. I don't know if you could swim a swim bait over those brush piles and still catch them if it was middle of the day and sunny. I don't know, but with these conditions, I could throw it over there, swim it just above the top of the brush pile, and you literally would see the fish come out of the brush pile and eat it. And you'd know right away. Usually the first or second cast, If it was a bad brush pile, I'd keep throwing and throwing and throwing, and nothing would happen. And eventually, I'm like, there aren't any here. And then when you got to a good brush pile, you'd throw over there and be first cast every time. And you might even see, before you make the first cast, you might even see what you are that you might suspect are fish sitting there on the tops of it. So you'd throw over there, and they'd come up and grab it, and it was on. It was really cool. And that depth control is so critical because you're not snagging the brush pile. If you don't know, I mean, before Active Target, we'd count down in our heads. 1001, 1002, 1003, and by using that, we would know. But still, the tops of the brush piles are uneven. If you were to count it down too deep, you would snag the top of the brush pile. But with the Active Target, you're not. Eventually I would snag the brush pile because to get the least active crappies, I'd let it sink a little closer to the top, and I'd try it. And then you'd try to weave it through low spots in the brush pile to get more bites. So eventually I would snag it because I'd be letting that jig settle in too close. But then here's the other thing you can do. You know when you get to the near side of the brush pile, and then you just kill it and let it go all the way to the bottom, and hopefully maybe catch one, towards the bottom, or bass that's maybe sitting on the bottom. Because I did catch a few small bass today with this crappie jig as well. So, anyways, and the other thing I learned with these crappies is, I'd catch some. And then the action would kind of get slow, and I couldn't see him. I couldn't see him swimming out of the brush pile to get my jig, or the crappie jig. And then, if I just let it sit for a little bit, or what I do is I take a regular bass lure and throw over there and see if I could catch a bass. But there'd be some time, and actually, them bass lures kind of stirred up. It kind of stirred things up in there, because right after I do that, all of a sudden there'd be new crappies right at the top there. So I don't know if the more vibration of the bigger baits just drew deeper crappies up near the top or what, or if the ones that were down saw that there was no other crappies at the top, they decided to rise up. For whatever reason, new crappies kept rising up to the top of the brush pile, and I could catch more fish after it sat for just a little bit. Not a long time. I'm talking like 4 minutes. So anyways, so that's the connection. Oh, yeah, and the ultimate connection was I'll be eating these crappies with the RV park manager, Ed, and his wife. We'll be eating these crappies Saturday. Him and I filleted them up today, and Saturday they are on the menu. So there you have it. Sam Rayburn Lake, crappies, Active Target, and brush piles equals Saturday night dinner. Over.